Everyone thinks the danger is always outside, something trying to get in. But that night, I learned the real terror is when you're already inside, and you realize you aren't the only one there. The house was locked, the windows were sealed, and I was supposed to be safe. But the first sign, a single footprint in the dust on the hardwood floor, told me I was wrong. It was a footprint that wasn't mine, wasn't the child's, and wasn't wearing shoes. It was a lie in a silent house. My name is Chloe, and I was 17, a seasoned high school babysitter. I'd been doing it since I was 13, and I was good at it. I was responsible, I was great with kids, and I knew how to handle just about any situation that came up. This new job was for a family, the Millers, who had just moved into a large old house on the edge of town. The parents were kind but seemed a little formal, almost nervous, as they walked me through the house. The house itself was beautiful but old, full of dark wood and long winding hallways. It had a certain scent to it, a musty, old house smell mixed with a hint of something damp. The child, a 6-year-old boy named Ethan, was well behaved and went to bed without a fuss. The parents gave me their number, told me he usually sleeps through the night, and left. I settled onto the big, plush couch in the living room, thinking it would be an easy night of homework and mindless TV. But the moment the door closed behind them, the house seemed to sigh, to settle in, and the silence began to feel heavy. The first hint of a problem was a subtle one, a tiny detail that, on its own, would have meant nothing. I was in the kitchen, making myself a snack, and I noticed it. On the pristine, dark hardwood floor, just a few feet from the back door, was a single footprint. It was a little dusty, a little smudged, but it was there. It was too big to be Ethan's, and I hadn't taken my shoes off since I got there. I stood there, staring at it for a moment, my heart giving a small, uncomfortable lurch. But I was a rational person. It was probably from one of the movers, a smudge I hadn't noticed before. I took a paper towel, knelt down, and wiped it away, feeling a prickle of unease that I immediately dismissed. But as the night wore on, the house started to make its own sounds. The faint rustling from the upstairs hallway, the sound of a door that I was sure I had seen closed, slowly creaking open. I checked on Ethan. He was sleeping soundly, a silent, peaceful lump under his blankets. The rustling stopped the moment I reached the top of the stairs. I chalked it up to the house settling, a draft playing tricks on the old wood. I was just being jumpy. But the paranoia grew when the sounds became more deliberate. I was sitting on the couch, my phone in my hand, when I heard it. The distinct sound of a floorboard creaking upstairs, a sound I knew was too deliberate, too heavy, to be the house settling. It was the sound of a footstep. I sat bolt upright, my heart hammering in my chest. I called the Miller's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. I was alone, with no way to contact them, and I was no longer convinced I was alone in the house. I heard a muffled, rhythmic tapping from inside a closet door in the downstairs hallway. It was a soft, insistent tapping, like fingers against wood. My phone's flashlight beam was a pathetic, trembling shield as I aimed it at the closet, and the tapping stopped. The moment I looked away, it started again, but this time from inside the pantry in the kitchen. It was no longer a random sound. It was an oral taunt, a game being played with my fear, and the thing playing it knew exactly what it was doing. The final escalation before the climax was a sound that seemed designed to break my sanity. I was in the living room, trying to stay calm, when I heard it. The faint, distorted music of a music box playing an off-key, warped lullaby. The sound was coming from upstairs, from the direction of Ethan's room. I knew there was no music box in his room. The Millers had shown me the baby monitor, and I knew what his room looked like. There was no music box. The lullaby was a lie, a cruel, childish taunt. My fear was no longer about a harmless prank. It was about a very real, very present threat inside the house, with me and the child. The sounds were no longer just sounds. They were a breadcrumb trail, and the breadcrumbs were leading me to a very specific and very terrifying conclusion. I had to go upstairs and check on him. I had to know if he was safe, if he was even still in his room. The thought of finding him gone was more terrifying than the thought of finding the thing that had been playing with me. I forced myself to go upstairs, my feet heavy on the creaking steps. The music box stopped the moment I reached the landing, leaving me in a terrifying silence. The air was colder up there. I slowly, fearfully, opened the door to Ethan's room, my phone's flashlight a weak beacon in the profound darkness. He was still in his bed, a small lump under the blankets. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a profound, chilling dread. As I got closer, I saw that he was not just asleep. He was lying on top of a pile of his own clothes, and someone had tucked him in with the blanket pulled tight over his face. He was completely still. The air in the room was cold and smelled of damp earth. As I reached out to him, I heard a low, guttural breathing from inside the closet in his room. The breathing was heavy, labored, and it was getting louder. The closet door was slightly ajar. A long pale finger with a dirty fingernail slowly, deliberately, hooked around the edge of the door and began to pull it open. I didn't try to save Ethan. I didn't try to be brave. I just ran. I burst out of the house and drove away, dialing 911 from my car. I was crying, screaming into the phone that there was something in the house, that the child was in danger. The police arrived at the house, but they found nothing out of the ordinary. The child was sleeping soundly in his bed, safe and sound. The Millers called me a few days later, their voices cold and formal, telling me they understood I had an anxiety attack, but my services would no longer be needed. The police, the parents, everyone said it was a panic attack, that I imagined it all. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. I can still hear that breathing from the closet. The memory of that pale, dirty finger pulling open the door, and the knowledge that something was in that house with me, and had been toying with me the entire time, is a weight I will carry forever. I never babysat again. I still jump at every strange sound, and I still wonder what would have happened if I had just stayed in the living room and ignored the music box. What if the thing in the closet didn't want me to run? What if it just wanted me to open the door? People always say, children have imaginary friends. And most of the time, that's exactly what they are, imaginary, a harmless product of a vibrant, creative mind. But the little girl I was watching that night, the one who kept talking to the man in the walls, she wasn't making it up. The man was real, and he wasn't just in the walls. He was in her, too, and he wanted to play with me. My name is Leah, and I was a college student trying to pay for my second semester. I took a high-paying babysitting job for a family, the Hendersons, who lived in a massive, modern mansion on the outskirts of town. The house was all glass, steel, and stark, pristine white walls. The parents were a little cold, a little distant, and their little girl, Lily, who was 7, was eerily quiet and withdrawn. She rarely spoke, and her eyes, though large and a startling shade of green, seemed to hold a vast, empty sadness. Before they left, the parents gave me a strange, specific rule. Don't let Lily go into the basement. Never, for any reason. They didn't elaborate, just said it with a chilling finality that left a cold knot in my stomach. I dismissed it as a parental quirk, a way to keep a curious child safe from a messy cellar. I put Lily to bed, and she was quiet as a mouse, not a sound coming from her room. I settled onto the pristine white couch, and the silence of the house, so perfect and clean, began to feel suffocating. The first hint of a problem was a faint sound from the hallway, a soft, repetitive tapping. I attributed it to the house settling or the plumbing, but it was too rhythmic, too deliberate. A few minutes later, I went to check on Lily, and I found her out of bed, standing in front of a closet door, tapping on it with her small, pale fingers. The sound was soft, but it was the same rhythm I had heard from the hallway. "Lily," I whispered, "what are you doing?" She turned to me, her face expressionless, and just whispered, "I'm talking to the man." My blood ran cold. "What man?" I asked, my voice a hollow whisper. She just pointed at the closet, a slow, deliberate gesture, and said nothing more. I told her it was just an empty closet, that it was time to go back to sleep. She obeyed me, without a fuss, a compliant, silent doll, but the tapping had been real, and she had been doing it. The weirdness escalated after that. I was in the living room, trying to force myself to focus on my textbook, when Lily emerged from her room. She wasn't walking, but shuffling, her head bowed. She stood in the doorway, staring at me, and began to speak in a strange, low voice. A voice that was gravelly and deep, a voice that was nothing like hers. The words she said were just nonsense, but the tone was menacing, guttural. She pointed a small, delicate finger to a dark corner of the room and said, "He told me to tell you he likes your hair." The chill that ran down my spine was not from a draft. I looked at the corner, but there was nothing there but shadow. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified. I sent her back to bed, and she went without a word, her quietness now more terrifying than her strange new voice. I found myself in a state of profound paranoia, jumping at every shadow, every creak. I went into Lily's room, needing a distraction, and found her sketchbook on her nightstand. I opened it, and my breath hitched in my throat. The drawings were not of princesses or cartoons. They were frantic, scribbled pictures of a tall, thin figure with impossibly long fingers and limbs, a gaunt, shadowy figure that was always in the corner of a room, always watching. The drawings were terrifying, and they all had a single phrase written on them in a childish, crooked hand. "Come play with us." My phone buzzed, and I almost dropped it. It was a text message from the Hendersons' phone number. The message was just a jumble of gibberish, but it was followed by an image. I clicked on it, and the screen illuminated a picture of me, sitting on the couch in the living room, taken from a strange, low angle. It was a picture of me just a few moments ago. The fear shifted from the child's unsettling behavior to a direct, physical threat. Something was in the house with me, and it was watching me. I searched the house in a blind panic. My phone's flashlight beam a useless beacon against the profound darkness of the mansion. The doors were all locked, the windows sealed. I was alone, or so I thought. I returned to Lily's room and found her bed empty. My heart seized in my chest. She was gone. I searched the upstairs, the main floor, the kitchen, calling her name in a frantic, desperate whisper, but there was no answer, just the silence of the house, heavy and oppressive. That's when I heard it, a faint, muffled giggle, a child's sound of glee, coming from the direction of the basement door. The door the parents had told me never to open. The memory of the drawings, of the strange, guttural voice, of the photograph, came crashing back. My instincts told me to run, to get out of the house, but the sound of her laughter, a genuine, joyful sound, was a lure I couldn't resist. I had to go. I had to get her out of there. I descended into the dark, cold basement, the flashlight beam bouncing off concrete walls and dusty storage boxes. The air was thick and smelled of damp earth and rot, and the temperature dropped to a bone-chilling cold. I found Lily standing in the middle of the room, completely still. And she was not alone. Standing just behind her, in the deepest shadow of the room, was a tall, thin silhouette. It was the figure from the drawings. It was swaying back and forth, and it was making the tapping sound, a soft, deliberate tap of a long, spindly finger against the concrete wall. Lily turned to me, a wide, empty smile on her face, and said in a low, hollow voice that wasn't hers. He likes to play hide and seek, but he's not very good at hiding. The figure sways toward me, its limbs unfolding in an unnatural motion, and its form seems to ripple and dissolve in the darkness. A living shadow reaching for me, a malevolent smile of pure, hungry evil spreading across its face in a blind panic. I turned and ran, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I scrambled up the stairs, slamming and locking the basement door behind me. I called 911, screaming that there was a man in the house, that he was going to get the child. The police arrived, but they found nothing. The house was empty. They eventually found Lily, who was perfectly fine, asleep in her bed, with no memory of what had happened. I never saw the Hendersons again. They paid me for the night's work, but I kept the drawing of the figure. I live with the chilling knowledge that some children aren't just communicating with imaginary friends. They're a doorway, and I now know what kind of things are on the other side of that door, and that they love to play hide and seek. The most unnerving part of being a babysitter isn't the darkness or the strange sounds. It's the moment you realize the child isn't just a child. They're a lens, a focus for something you can't see, and you're not there to protect them. You're there to be the distraction, to keep the monster focused on you while it gets closer to what it really wants. And what it wants is the child. My name is Sarah, and I was 16 when I took a babysitting job for a family. The Johnsons, who had just moved into a house that was a century old. It was a beautiful home, with dark wood, dusty books, and a grand, sweeping staircase. But it had a heavy, oppressive silence to it, the kind of silence that feels like it's waiting. The parents, an overworked couple with a distant, haunted look in their eyes, told me about their two children, 8-year-old Lily and her 7-year-old brother, Max. The kids are in bed by 8, the mother said, her voice strained. They're quiet. They don't make a fuss. Don't worry about them. Just sit, watch TV, and wait for us to get back. I dismissed the strange tone in her voice as simple exhaustion. She seemed relieved to be leaving, almost desperate. As the door closed behind them, I settled onto the couch, a sense of deep unease settling in with the silence. The first hint of a problem was a sound from the basement, a faint, low humming sound that was rhythmic and mechanical, almost like a music box. I dismissed it, thinking maybe there was an old appliance running down there, but the sound was persistent, and it was too low to be a machine. It was a humming, a lullaby, and it was coming from the darkness beneath my feet. I went to the basement door and found it locked. I peered through a small glass pane in the door, but the basement was pitch black, a void. The humming stopped the moment I got to the door. I convinced myself it was nothing, but when I went back to the living room, I heard another sound. The unmistakable sound of a child's laughter, a soft, joyful giggle, coming from the top of the stairs in the kids' room. But the laughter was too perfect, too clear, too close. I had been told the kids were asleep. My heart began to pound in my chest. I crept to the base of the stairs and peered up into the darkness. There was nothing there, just the silent, winding staircase. I knew I had to check on the kids. I had to know if they were okay. I found Max in his bed, a silent, unmoving lump under the blankets. But Lily was gone. Her bed was empty, the covers thrown off as if in a hurry. My throat went dry. I called her name in a frantic whisper, but there was no answer. I heard the laughter again, a soft, ethereal giggle, this time from the upstairs hallway, at the end of the hall, where a single door, half hidden by shadow, was slightly ajar. I had to follow the sound. I had no other choice. The laughter stopped the moment I reached the door. I slowly pushed it open and peered into the room, a spare, dusty room with a single, small window, and in the corner of the room standing completely still, was Lily. She was staring out the window, her back to me, her body completely rigid. "Lily," I whispered, "what are you doing? You have to get back to bed." She didn't move. I saw the silhouette of her head was tilted at a strange, unnatural angle. I got closer, and that's when I saw the window. It wasn't just a window, it was a mirror, and in the mirror, I could see her face. Her eyes were not the eyes of a child. They were black and empty, and a profound, unblinking horror. Her mouth was a tight, thin line of pure, malevolent hatred, and she wasn't alone. In the mirror, I saw the reflection of a tall, impossibly thin, shadowy figure standing right behind her, its long, spindly fingers resting on her shoulders. I knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that the laughter hadn't been hers. It had been the monster's. It was a lure, and I had walked right into it. I screamed, a terrified, strangled sound, and I scrambled backward out of the room. I ran down the stairs, but as I reached the bottom, I saw them. Max and Lily. They were both standing there, at the base of the stairs, their bodies rigid, their heads tilted at that same unnatural angle. Their eyes were black, and a slow, deliberate tapping sound, like a finger against wood, was coming from inside the pockets of Max's pajamas. They started walking toward me, a slow, shuffling gait, their limbs moving in a jerky, puppet-like fashion. I tried to scream, but my voice had failed me. I was trapped, a single person against two things that were no longer children, in a house that was no longer a home. I ran into the kitchen, slamming the door behind me, but I knew it was useless. I looked out the kitchen window, into the cold, dark night, and I saw a new reflection, standing just behind me. A tall, shadowy figure with black, empty eyes was looking back at me, a wide, malevolent grin on its face. The humming began again, a low, guttural, rhythmic sound from all around me. It wasn't a lullaby, it was a death song. The humming grew louder, a profound, deafening noise that seemed to fill the very air in the room, and I saw the figure in the window move toward me, its limbs unfolding in an unnatural, horrific motion. The police found me huddled in the corner of the kitchen, a terrified, sobbing wreck, but they found nothing else. The house was empty. The children were found safe and sound, in a neighbor's house, where they had run for help after they had woken up to a strange noise. The Johnsons never hired me again. I quit babysitting, and I never went back to that house. The memory of the children's black eyes, the tapping sound, and the humming will stay with me forever. I know now that some houses are not just homes. They are traps. And some children aren't just children. They're a disguise, and you're not there to protect them. You're there to be the bait. The sound of a child's laughter is no longer a sound of joy to me. It's the sound of a monster, getting closer